I'm not sure if you were able to see it, but I did send an annotated agenda to you this morning, and that might help facilitate how we move along in our conversation today.
Perfect.
I'm not sure if you were able to see it.
You are officially live streaming, so take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. This is our first investment work group meeting, and I want to thank the members of the work group that have volunteered to join us today. I just wanted to let everybody know that we are live streaming on our YouTube channel and that this recording will be made available to the public. And with that, since we are all here, I will hand it over to our chair, Ms. Liza McFadden.
Thank you, Dina. Okay, and I'm going to ask Chiquita to do roll call. And I guess we'll do a quick roll call, and then we'll just do a round robin for folks who don't know each other.
Mr. Scott Fennell.
I'm here.
Mr. John Grayson.
Yes, good morning, I'm here.
Ms. Sika Green.
Here, didn't know I was on the roll.
Mr. Scott Ross.
Here.
Mr. Patrick Scott. Ms. Liza McFadden.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great. And maybe we can go around with a little bit of background on everyone. Just, I agreed to chair this. I do chair endowment actually for the Boy Scouts Swanee River, and also worked on endowment efforts and investment efforts for a number of nonprofits, nationally, Reading Partners, and as well as helping other national groups and some local groups as well. So it's something I really enjoy doing. Have never done it for a governmental entity, and I'm finding that is quite a bit different than doing it for a business or a nonprofit, which I hadn't expected it to be quite so different. So it's a little bit of background for me. Scott Ross, I'm just going to go in the order of people on my screen.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Scott Ross. I'm the director of Leon County's Office of Financial Stewardship, which includes the budget, purchasing, risk management, and real estate. And then I also serve on the county's investment oversight committee.
Okay, great. John Grayson.
Good morning. My name is John Grayson. I am accountant for the Children's Services Council. I'm a CPA with the office here locally.
Good. Scott Fennell.
Hey, good morning. Name's Scott Fennell. Scott Fennell is actually the right way to pronounce it, but I grew up saying Fennell, so I will answer to either one. I am currently the Deputy Chief Financial Officer for CFO Jimmy Petronas. My role is overseeing what I would consider the operations enterprise functions for the state. That includes all of our accounting and auditing functions, treasury, which is where my investment background plays in, and then also risk management for the state of Florida. We're a self-insured state. So those are my main areas of coverage, and I'm happy to be here.
Okay. I want to make sure everybody has received the agenda and was sent out by Dina earlier, as she said. I'm going to seek approval of the agenda. And I know we're a little bit formal as a body because of public information. So if anyone would mind moving the agenda, I would appreciate it.
Make a motion to move the agenda.
Okay, and the second?
I can second.
All right, thank you. And unless there's anybody with disagreement or wants to make a change to it, we'll see it formally adopted. Okay, great. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we're going to start off with a little bit about the purpose of the committee, which really I know the folks here understand, but for the public, we really want to go, there's in the way that we can work, we want to make the best use of the money that we have through the CSC and develop a formal reserve and investment policy We may want to hire an investment firm through a competitive procurement. And the goal of this group is to really work on a work plan that would give us guidance over the next few weeks to pull that together. Our board has adopted a lot of different activities that have to happen in the fall and then in the spring. And this is one of those things that we really want to get done this fall. And of course, it's just, really important due diligence, of course. Introductions, we kind of did that already. And I'm going to turn it over to Dina to talk a little bit about governance in the sunshine and moving forward, how we're going to have to do that. We do have some members from the public who have joined us. So you guys can see, we do try to open it up. And by the way, because I know Rob, hello to Rob too. And Dina, I'll turn it over to you to do a little bit on government in the sunshine.
Okay, I apologize. I am trying to make sure I share the correct screen because of course I have 1,000,001 items open. So let's see if the right one pops up. Yes, it did. And give me 1 second. And so many of you, thank you, Chair McFadden, I appreciate it. And once again, good morning to everyone for joining us. Many of you are probably familiar with the Sunshine Law, but we wanted to take just a few moments to provide a brief overview. Unlike nonprofit work, the Children's Services Council of Leon is a government entity, and as such, we operate under a right of access to governmental proceedings. While you're not necessarily elected officials or council members, you are appointed as members of this work group, and all activities related to this meeting fall under the Sunshine Law. The work group will be discussing matters that will come before the board for foreseeable action. Please be mindful that work group members may not conduct private discussions pertaining to the work group business. This includes any communications via phone, text messages, emails, and all social media platforms. All of these records and communications fall under the Sunshine Law and would need to be archived accordingly. The Sunshine Law comes into effect when 2 or more work group members gather to have discussions on matters that are being presented to the board. And while the work group, we will not be taking any formal action, we are looking forward to this discussion and your recommendations that we will be presenting to the board for actions. We have ensured that the meetings are open to the public, that they have been publicly noticed in a timely manner, and that meeting minutes are being recorded. As we shared at the start of the meeting, we are also live streaming this meeting itself on the YouTube channel. The recording, as well as all meetings, will be made available to the public. The Sunshine Law does apply penalties for any unintentional violation, and given that, we just wanted to make sure that we erred on the side of caution, had this brief discussion, and just kind of let you know what the Sunshine Law guidelines are, and just to remind everyone once again that we do operate under the Sunshine Law. I know that was very brief. Like we said earlier, several of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with this process, but I just wanted to see if anybody had any questions regarding public records or Sunshine Law itself. I see a couple of no's being said or shaken no's. So with that, I will turn it back over to Chair McFadden.
Thank you, Dina. And I know you guys, many of you work in governments, you're familiar with this, and we just want to be as transparent as possible and make sure the public understands that we want to do that. Jaquita, do we have anyone from the public who wanted to make comment?
We don't have any public comment at this time.
Okay, is there anyone who's on with us who wanted to make public comment? We're just getting started. I'm sure there'll be more in the coming. Okay, so let's jump into it. We're going to talk about the work plan development. So just to kind of give a little bit of background on forecasting rollover and what we're going to assume moving forward on finances. If we have a 95% collection rate, and we want to ensure that about 5% remain in rolling reserves over the next 10 years, then the max reserve estimate over that period, the highest it would probably get is to about 7 million. And that's, pending that no reserve funding was utilized for emergencies or what have you. And the lowest estimate at the 0.375 could be as low as $5.388 million. So what we'd like to do is first open a discussion to address the investment objectives. I think because this is governmental entity, the safety of maintaining the principal is really important. We do have to maintain liquidity at probably a much higher rate. For example, this fall, we don't anticipate money going out very quickly, but in the spring, we'll really probably put out a lot of grant dollars. So we'll have to maintain liquidity. We won't be able to keep reserves in there for a long period of time. And so then, that return maximization becomes something when you say safety of principal, that means we're probably looking at a fairly conservative way to maximize our return. So would like to kind of open that up for some conversation. I can share with the group that over the past couple of months, I've done some due diligence and talking to some of the larger investment groups that are varied banks that do business in Florida, whether they have a national footprint or a state footprint. And there's going to be a challenge. Many of them are very uncomfortable doing work with governmental entities, which the Children's Services Council is. So you look at a Bank of America, they've exited really doing work in that area and so forth. So I think because of that, we may need to be looking at Florida Class or some of the other entities that are more familiar with working with governmental entities, and it will definitely impact our rate of return. But I wanted with that to kind of open it up for conversation on all three of those topics. How we sustain it, how we make sure we have liquidity, and just any thoughts that any of the commission members have about what they'd like to see if we develop an RFP moving forward to look at this. I'll open the floor for discussion.
Liza?
Yes.
Chair McFadden, if I might interrupt, there's an additional work group member who joined us a little bit late, and so might want to allow him to introduce himself.
Thank you, Sika.
Right on the spot. Hi everyone, how you doing? My name is Patrick Scott. Forgive me, I'm actually on this glider with a vacation I have, so it's kind of hard on the beach getting logged in. So now I'm in San Francisco, as you see the Golden Gate Bridge behind me. And so that said, just running a state planning firm, wealth management firm in Tallahassee, and so really excited, to be able to partner with all of you today and accomplish these objectives together with sound advice and questions being asked. And so I would ask, to kick that off, in terms of the investment objectives, being liquid, very conservative, guarantee of principal. One question I have, are there restrictions around, I guess, where dollars could go, particularly like in terms of like what assets could be invested in? Just one question I had.
Yeah, if we develop, an investment policy, we are allowed to do an investment policy or to invest in governmental, traditional governmental bodies. The challenge on the IPS is that, as I was saying earlier, I'm not sure how many banks would actually take us up. But to your question, there's not so many restrictions as when I was talking to the larger banks, concerns around the fact that government frequently changes their rules, and that several of them have been caught in that sort of rule changing, and so are not that excited about working with a governmental entity.
And Chair McFadden, if I might add, again, I don't play an investment person on TV at all, but we can't invest or do any bond deals of any kind. So we can't do any of that by statute.
Thank you.
Chairman?
Yes.
So you hit it as far as the county governs itself as far as investments. So the first priority is maintaining your principal, then liquidity, and rate of return is the third highest priority, and that's it. The county has a robust investment policy. We do have some money in banks. We have money in some of these government pools that do very well, that do pretty well. But then we also have a money manager, not a bank, so to say, that we've done through an RFP Insight, who helps us manage about 45% of our portfolio. So depending on, as your portfolio grows, you might want to consider that option. But there are other options out there other than banks that will actually give you a better rate of return.
Mm-hmm. Scott, why do you use 45% of it being?
Well, that's about what it is right now. We had some federal funds that came in from ARPA that we're going to go for capital projects. So just if you look at our cash flow right now, about 45% of it is an investment. Sometimes it'll be higher than that, depending on how much cash we have on hands for needs. Because we like to keep a healthy reserve as well, because we have to deal with natural disasters, hurricanes and stuff. So we need to have those kind of reserves on hand to pay for that up front. But right now, with the money coming in from the federal government that we have, which will go out, we don't have that invested, which is why we have it at about 45%. But sometimes it'll range up to 55 or so. But it's all dependent on cash flow. You want to see what kind of cash flow you have so you can see how much you need to make sure you have that liquidity. But the county has since governments do quite use each other's policies. I'm sure the city has a investment policy. The county has an investment policy that we last updated in 2019, and that might be a benchmark to work from.
I think that's a great suggestion. Would you be able to get us a copy of the county policy?
Yes.
And what about the city?
I'm sure it's on their website. I could probably dig that up as well.
And it may be a different animal altogether, but obviously the state has an investment policy as well. Mm-hmm. We all same principles, exact same as you mentioned, Liza. It's principal protection, liquidity, and then growth are our three in that order. So we do a lot of it's all fixed asset investments is what we do here at the state. I'm glad you mentioned FL class. There are options out there, I think, that local governments have been using for management of funds. So, from the state's perspective, we have external managers, but it's like the Vanguards, the BlackRocks, those type of people. We have internal managers as well that handle the shorter term duration investments in our fixed asset portfolios. And I'm going to check in and see, I know we do manage some dollars for local governments through special purpose investment accounts. And I'm not sure if that's something that the Treasury could also be an option for the Children's Services Council, but I'm gonna look into it. I could be, they might shake their heads when I talk to them, but I'm gonna find out what options we might have there.
That would be great. Thank you.
And the county does have a substantial amount of money in SPIA as well.
John, any thoughts, or Patrick?
No, I don't have anything. It's this investment world is kind of out of my league, so I'll just
try to keep us legally
right.
And I would just say to Scott and Scott, great names. My last name is Scott, right? It's like the Scott trio. How do we work this out?
There you go.
I would love to see, like you said, some of those fixed asset holdings, kind of what's being utilized, just to kind of bounce ideas off of potential what's out there. Like you said, with those objectives, rate of return being last, I think checking out those first two, there are some options to really maybe increase yield, the same way banks kind of use for themselves. I just don't know, how that would fit into the portfolio. So I would love to see kind of what the county is already doing, what the dollars y'all already managing, and see if there's some different, alternatives we can offer in that space in terms of an idea.
Right.
Okay, so it sounds like next steps is really to gather both the city, county, and state. So yeah, this is complicated. So Scott Fennell, taking you up on your offer as well. And if we can get all three of those and share them amongst this group, I think that would be a really good place to start doing some analysis. Sika, do we have a schedule of when this group is going to meet, or how often this group is going to meet?
So that is really up to you all to determine how often you want to meet, when your next meeting. That's actually on the agenda toward the end. But as I said right before you came on, Chair McFadden, we're trying to be very deliberate. We know we're not dealing with a huge amount of money that would have people just say, yeah,
Right.
we want PSC. So we just want to be able to develop a sound investment policy. I think the one that we just approved through resolution, just as we were going into this process, is based off of the counties. And I think Holly helped to kind of maneuver that. So we do have something in place that allows us to go through this process, but
Okay.
it is totally up to you all.
Okay. Well, I do know that you all have a lot on your plate for the fall that we need to get through. So my recommendation would be, based on folks' schedule, if we can share all three documents out with the team fairly quickly, my recommendation would be, since these are all seasoned folks who have seen these things before, that maybe we could get together sooner rather than later, if folks are agreeable to that.
And so what we can do is, if everyone, well, I see some links in the chat already. So Dina's going to grab those links. So we'll have that. If there's any other information, if you would send that to Dina at D Snyder, so that's D as in dog, SNIDER at cscleon.org. She just put it in the chat. Then we can cultivate those and get those out to all of the work group members. Additionally, Chair McFadden, we can work with the work group to determine when the next meeting will be. So we'll handle that, and sooner than later. We just need to know, do you want to do it again in September? Do you want to do October? What kind of works?
I prefer September if it works with everyone else, just to keep this moving forward. Because I mean, this was great as far as, let's, who's who, and let's gather documents. But I really want to get to that, more meaty conversation. So I think that the next meeting will allow us to do that. So if folks are agreeable, I'd love to do it in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so just a couple of dates to keep in mind. Later this week is our first trim hearing, so that'll be on the 8th at 5:15. We have our council meeting on the 15th at 2 p.m. We have another committee meeting, I think it's executive committee, on the 12th. And then we have our last trim meeting, our last trim hearing, on the 22nd. So we do have about 4 other meetings that will go on this month. Has nothing to do with you all. We just have to make sure that we don't conflict out with our council member because we need her at a couple of those.
Oh, well, maybe I haven't told you, but on the 15th, I'm in Alaska, so I can't be there because you guys don't allow Zooming, but.
Chair McFadden, if I may, I know the last time we met, I sent out a doodle poll just to try to get the best available dates and times for everybody. So what I can do is just kind of get with you first and kind of solidify a couple of dates first, and then send them out to the group so that we can pick the best time available for everyone, and hopefully look at potentially having it the last week in September. That gives us enough time to get past all the dates and the upcoming meetings that we may have, time for us to gather all the documents that are going to be provided. I pulled the one that was already sent. Thank you very much. And then getting all that together to send it back out to the group, as well as giving the group ample time to be able to review those documents so that they can go ahead and have some additional input and recommendations for when we meet again, if that works for you all.
That sounds great. That would be the week of the 26th, I think, if that works for folks.
Yeah.
Right.
And also one more thing that we needed to explore while we are in our investment work group is the need for a reserve policy. So if there are any thoughts or inputs in that regard, we would love to hear any insight you may be able to provide for us today.
Just as a point of clarification, back last fall, Chair McFadden, you'll recall this, the council did adopt a pseudo policy of holding 5% back in reserve, but it was not formalized and it was not kind of a rolling reserve really. It was just kind of a consensus motion. I want to say it was at the May 2021 meeting. So we do have that, but we don't have any formal policy on the books. And so I thought with the expertise of the group that is here, if you have to, in addition to sharing your investment policy, if you have a reserve policy or want to facilitate discussion around that. I know that we previously had conversations with the county about some of their recommendations, which is the projection that Dina shared earlier was related to kind of getting that figuring out a rolling reserve that might get us to a balance. But again, we've not ever formally adopted anything. So that's one of the additional roles. But just wanted to share the background of, I say loose policy, right? A consensus kind of directive by the council that was passed last summer.
Additionally, I do have a couple of reserve policies from other CSCs. Now,
Okay.
that being said, they are CSCs that bring in a significantly high amount of money. So what our yearly ad valorem revenues are, it's like that's for a month for a couple of these CSCs, but I will get that information and we will pull that together as well and get that to all of the work group meetings, Chair McFadden, if that's okay with you.
That'd be great. And Sika, if we could also ask our audit team, I know traditionally, at least when I've worked with nonprofits, they usually recommend, you know, an amount to keep in reserves. And so I don't know if we've talked to our audit team about what they have as a potential recommendation as well.
Right. So currently we don't have an audit team because we haven't had to have an audit. That's something that's actually on our agenda for this month because we will be doing our first financial audit after this program year that will end that will end September 30. I'm sorry, I had a brain fog. That will end September 30. So we can ask around for sure, and even ask our general counsel as well.
Because I know Scott may be able to lean in, Scott may be able to lean on this from a governmental perspective. I know from a nonprofit perspective, typically the reserves that are recommended are fairly high, and that's partially because nonprofits are unlike government. The ebb and flow of their dollars varies so much from year to year. So they typically are recommended to have as high as 20%. I'm assuming with government, because you don't have as much up and down, you know, the recommendation on reserves might be quite lower, but not an area that I have expertise in.
Well, I'll tell you, we do have a couple of CSCs that their reserve policy, and they change it depending on the projections. But I think for this year, their reserve policy is 27%. We have another one that's at 9, another one that's at about 15. So at 5, we definitely are on the lower end of that reserve policy. And I do know that we've had a couple comments from a few council members that want to ensure, and I would have to agree, just my novice opinion, if that's what it is, that we don't want to have it too high. But at the same time, because we still don't really know what this housing market is going to do. I mean, they're saying that it's going to keep going up. I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows. But so just when I get that information to you, you can kind of look at it, look at the money they're bringing in. Holly just actually shared a document that we will also get to you if we hadn't already, but it's the reserve projection over the years. And I think, Holly, by 2032, if we were to just keep going, is it like 15 million or something like that?
If we look at 2033, which is a 10-year projection, we will be looking at 7.18 million.
Million, that's what it is, yeah.
Yes.
And I think just to clarify, in that projection, based on some of the comments that we had, when staff put it together, at some point deciding to maybe scale back a 5% investment, so that once that reserve built, so when you receive the document and you kind of look at it, you'll see there's 2 points that are highlighted in red. And in each of those, it kind of is like, well, maybe if you started to scale back at that point in terms of how much you put in the investment pot, it would put our total budget around the 20%. I think it's like somewhere between 19 to 22% if you scaled back from, say, 5% every year to a 1% investment, so that you can maintain or build up your build up that reserve for that pot of money. And so I think that total, Dina, if you look at it, it might have that scale back around year 5. So I just wanted to clarify that when you're looking at it, it's not a compound interest that's occurring.
So I clearly was thinking about Mega Millions when I said 25 million, but I can't tell you how many numbers I've looked at over the last 8 months. So I apologize.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to share the county's reserve policy. We try to maintain at minimum, and we try to stay between 15 and 30 for our general revenue. And then we definitely want to preserve at least 10% of that for cash flow between October and November, when we still got to meet payroll and all the constitutional officers' bills until the ad valorem taxes start coming in.
Okay, that's pretty close then to what nonprofits are recommended. Scott Fennell, do you have similar?
Yeah, well, for the state, we've got the budget stabilization fund. And so that's between 5 and 10%. I think it's not supposed to go above 10 of the last year's collections. The way we budget is on an annual basis. And, I get arguments with Gary Fine all day about what's budget stabilization versus rainy day fund. But, right now, I guarantee we're over 10% with the excess revenues over projected expenditures and the budget stabilization fund. But, it depends on what exactly you're talking about. I think for the state, that makes sense. For this organization, and it sounds like what Mr. Ross was saying, something in the 15 to 30% would, to me, make a lot more sense, just as you look at the actual dollars that are coming in and making sure we're prepared for any kind of downflow.
Right. And part of the reason, on the county's point, I don't anticipate the Children's Service Council doing this, is we take excess above our maximums and put them in the capital projects general. So that's one of the reasons that we, monitor our reserves. So we take the excess, we can sweep it over and actually do projects without having to increase other taxes.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, if I may, Chair McFadden, that a few of the other CSCs, I know one in particular, Holly, has an excess of 50, 60 employees, maybe.
Oh yeah,
Maybe
definitely
higher.
Our South Florida people have large staffs.
Right, so they are also ensuring, to your point, Mr. Ross, that they are able to make payroll during the time when you're waiting on the ad valorem revenues to come in. We, at maximum, for the next at least 2 years, maybe 3, will have 4 team members and a contract team member. But then we also have our contracted services as well. So again, we're not in that situation where we're in fear of making payroll, but just want to kind of give that caveat as you're thinking through as well.
So right now, the money for the Children's Service Council is in a banking account or a money market fund?
So the majority of I guess I could let our CPA jump in, but since I have the floor, the majority of our money sits in a money market. And we usually keep, John, about 150,000, 200,000 in our checking or operating account.
Okay, well, let's move forward we'll continue this conversation. I think I'm, just from what I'm hearing, I think I'm sensing that around that 20-ish, maybe a fluid range that we can bring back to the board will make sense. And then we appreciate you all reaching out, and we'll try to schedule something for the last week of September if that works with everyone. And in the meantime, as everybody gets all of these various IPSs, if you could go look through them and jot down some notes, and that will really be sort of the bulk of the next conversation, I think. Does anybody have anything else they wanted to add? I want to thank everybody for joining and agreeing to be a team member. I probably should have said that at the very beginning because although I've done quite a bit of this, it's all been in the nonprofit sector, and I didn't realize until I got into the government sector that it was really quite different in how you have to think about it.
Well, glad to help out.
Very good. Well, then I will take a move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. And I saw Scott Fennell nod his head.
Yep.
I'm going to take that as a second.
I'll second. Yep, sounds good.
And we're adjourned. We appreciate everybody. And Patrick, thank you for joining on vacation. That was so above and beyond.
Hey, honored to be on. No other place I'd rather be than with you all than this beautiful beach. Absolutely.
Are you really in San Francisco, or are you at a different beach?
Hold on, I'll show you. I'm at the Breakers Resort down in Palm Beach.
Oh, we feel
Oh
really
my
bad for you now.
Take us with
So, yeah.
you. Awesome.
Come on down. Come on down.
So how